Hello everyone, I Kuldeep Sharma welcome you all to today's session of Daily News Analysis, where we are going to look at the most important news headlines from today's Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express. So let's look at the news headlines for today. So first news is regarding that the Supreme Court has made a remark that the BJP, the advertisement which the BJP has done, has some disparaging facts regarding a Trinamool party, and the Supreme Court has stated here that these are just your opponent and not your enemies, and such kind of language should not be used. Moreover, it is a violation of model code of conduct. So model code of conduct is a code of conduct. What is a code of conduct? So that how should political parties or how should the political parties behave, not just the political parties, whoever is involved in the election duties or is involved directly or indirectly into election, how they should behave is the duty of the model code of conduct to tell them. So this model code of conduct originated in the year 1960 and it was first used in the Kerala election. So the origin of model code of conduct is in 1960 Kerala elections. In the 1962 elections, it was circulated among political parties. It was circulated among political parties by Election Commission of India. And it was only in the year 1967. It was only in the year 1967 when it was implemented by the Election Commission of India. However, when the model code of conduct was launched by the Election Commission of India, it was known as minimum code of conduct. At that time, it was called minimum code of conduct. Later on, there were continuous amendments being done to the model code of conduct in the year 1974, 1979, 1981. Every 5 to 10 years, there was a reform in the model code of conduct. And the current model code of conduct, the broad framework which we see in front of us right now, was created in the year 1991. So it was originally created in the year 1991, and still there have been continuous amendments being done, certain changes, certain reforms being done to the model code of conduct every year. But the important thing you should know about model code of conduct is that it is a non-legal document. What do you understand by a non-legal document? That there is no law to back it. It is totally voluntary in nature. It is voluntary in nature, which means it is non-binding. It is non-binding. So for many of you, it must not be a new knowledge because we have done this part earlier also. So this is non-binding as of now. Next is by which case it received judicial recognition. So by which case the Supreme Court provided that this particular model code of conduct is a document which has to be followed by the political parties. So the case name is Union of India versus Harbans Singh Jalal 2001. And in this case, the Supreme Court clarified that the election, the model code of conduct becomes applicable from the date of announcement. So it is this case in which it was said that from the date of announcement of elections by the Election Commission of India. By Election Commission of India, for example, this year it was on 16th March that the Election Commission of India held a press conference and declared the date of elections for the Lok Sabha for 2024. So from that date itself, this model code of conduct becomes applicable. Then what is its applicability, on whom all it applies? So obviously it applies to all the political parties as well as their candidates, as well as other candidates, the independent candidates who are fighting it. Apart from it, it also applies to the government also. So government during this time is not supposed to do any kind of official activity. Is not supposed to do any kind of official activity which can influence voters. So it is not like that the government is not working. However, any kind of activity which can influence voters, for example, announcing a scheme when the model code of conduct is in operation is not allowed. As per the model code of conduct, the government cannot announce any new policy during the implementation of model code of conduct. So on the government, it is also applicable. Apart from it, it also applies to observers. Observers who have come there to observe the election, they should not try to influence the election. Next, certain recent addition to model code of conduct. So before we do this recent addition, let's look at what are the basic things which is talked about by model code of conduct. So these are some of the general idea. It is providing you with a list of ideas which the Election Commission of India provides under the Model Code of Conduct. So first it tells you what should be the general conduct of the political parties. For example, no political party or candidate should try to disturb religious or communal sentiments. You should not try to hurt the religious communal sentiments, or should not use religious or communal sentiments to get vote. Next, criticize opposition parties based on policies and work and not personal attacks. So it is expected that you criticize the opposition parties on their policies and work and not personal attacks. So it is of this reason, it is because of this reason that the Supreme Court has made this remark, because the attacks which were being done by the BJP or Trinamool Congress were actually personal attacks on Mamata Banerjee and other leaders of Trinamool Congress. So that's why this is a violation of the Model Code of Conduct. Third is, do not use places of worship for election propaganda. So it is expected that you do not do any kind of election speeches from a temple, from a mosque, from a church. You should not use place of worship when you are actually using propaganda. Next, respect citizens' right to a peaceful home life. So you should not, in simple terms, you should not breach the right to privacy of individual in the name of campaigning for an election. So you have to respect the privacy of a person. Next, what are the guidelines with regard to holding a meeting? So you have to inform local police of the venue and time of meeting. So you have to mention the venue where you are going to hold your election meeting, and what would be the time of meeting, from how long this meeting is going to take place, when it's going to start, when it's going to end, and you have to somehow maintain law and order there also. Third is procession. So if you are carrying out a rally, then you have to notify again local police or authorities, so that certain accommodations, certain arrangements can be done by the police in your route. Next, on polling day, so it is expected that you are going to cooperate with authorities. So all the candidates, all the political parties are asked to cooperate, and more importantly, you are not allowed to serve any eatables or liquor outside. So if you are actually providing eatables, some things to eat, you can provide water, but nothing to eat outside the polling station on the day of poll, because if you start providing eatables, it might be a form of bribery only, and that voter might get influenced by it, so you are not allowed to use it. Next, polling booth. So inside the polling booth, only voters who have their ID and a person who has a valid pass from the Election Commission of India are allowed inside polling booths. Next, observers. So as we discussed this earlier also, so observers are people who are there to see the elections. So some observers can be international observer also. For example, there can be members from the United Nations to see whether India is conducting a free and fair election. At the same time, Election Commission of India also appoints certain observers. For example, they can appoint someone who is a very good citizen, someone who has been a retired officer, retired IAS officer, retired state service officer, who would observe the election and would see whether the elections are being done fairly and freely, or is there any kind of corrupt practice going on in there. Next, party in power. So we have discussed this also, that the center or state must not use their official position in favor of their political parties. For example, let's say you are going to election rally. It is expected that you are not going to use the official vehicle. You are not going to use the official vehicle when you are going, a minister is going for a political rally or for political purpose. No official vehicle or other official resources should be used. And finally, election manifesto. So the Supreme Court had asked the Election Commission of India that it should frame guidelines, and accordingly the Election Commission of India, after discussing it with political parties, has framed certain guidelines regarding what should be there in the election manifesto and what kind of promises should not be there in an election manifesto. So there is another news regarding election manifestos. We are going to study that also. So apart from those guidelines, those general guidelines which have been issued by Election Commission of India, certain recent guidelines which have been added are that now it is provided that there is a requirement of regulation of opinion polls and exit polls. So you may know what are opinion polls and exit polls. So it had been a practice before the actual election result come up, that different survey companies and different TV channels also used to do survey of the polls. So basically what they used to do, they used to go and ask people, and they used to predict the election. However, it was always doubted ki whether these exit polls can influence the voters or not. So Election Commission of India, Supreme Court in a case, and many observers or many known people of this field have said that many of the people who are not completely decided with regard to whom they are going to vote may get influenced by exit polls and opinion polls. So because of it, the Election Commission of India has added into the Model Code of Conduct that opinion polls and exit polls can only be shown when the voting is complete. So not just voting is complete in a particular district. So it does not mean that you can give up an exit poll for that district or those states. For example, right now the election is going on in 7 phases. The election is in 7 phases, so 7 times the states have been divided, the constituencies have been divided into different phases. So in a one phase, certain states and certain districts would go to voting. In next phase, some other districts and some other states would go to voting. So the voting is going to complete in 7 phases. So the last election, the last vote is going to take place on June 1st, and the result date is June 4. So the date after which you can publish the exit poll is after the last vote. After the last vote is put up, then only you can actually show opinion polls and exit polls. You don't have to wait till the result day at least. However, you have to wait till the last vote of all the phases is put up, not just the phase 1, but of all the phases. Next is prohibition of advertisement in print media. So there is a prohibition of advertisement in print media on the polling day, on the date of polling, as well as a day before. On the date of polling as well as a day before. So prohibition of advertisement in print media. So basically in your newspapers, you cannot do any kind of advertisement on the polling day and a day before. And moreover, this particular prohibition also applies not just on print media, but also now on your TV media, etc. However, there is a loophole right now, which is your social media. And if you are an avid user of YouTube, etc., and you do not have the premium package, you must be able to see ads also of the governments where you would see a video, a particular video from a political party, and somewhere or the other the elections are going on. Still, these kind of ads are still visible, because as per the MCC, as of now, it is only talking about print media and TV media and not regard to social media and your YouTube, etc. And third, restriction on government advertisement. So again, there is no kind of government advertisement can be allowed when the MCC is in force. So you cannot even publish any advertisement regarding a scheme which has been launched earlier also. For those kind of scheme also, no kind of advertisement can be done. So this is it from this particular news. Moving on to the next news. So next news is regarding that Indian Meteorological Department, which is responsible for reportage of meteorological phenomena in India, or how the weather is forecasted in future. All of it is done by the IMD only. So now what it has forecasted that this year the monsoon is going to be above normal. So let's study some facts regarding IMD. So IMD is an agency under Ministry of Earth Sciences and is Director General. So there is a Director General of IMD. He is Mrityunjay Mohapatra, who is the IMD Minister. Not the Minister, but IMD DG, who is the Minister of Earth Sciences. So it is Kiran Rijiju. So currently it is Kiran Rijiju who is the Minister of Earth Science. However, the Director General of IMD is Mrityunjay Mohapatra. This is headquartered in Delhi, and it was created long back before independence on 15th January 1875. And what is the main purpose? So it is the principal agency for meteorological observation as well as your weather forecasting. And what it has forecasted, that this year monsoon 2024 is going to be above normal monsoon. So let's understand what is a normal monsoon. So the IMD has determined normal monsoon to mean that if I calculate my average monsoon for the last 50 years, if I calculate my monsoon for the last 50 years, I can come up on a long period average. So I'm not looking at the changes in rainfall to determine my normal monsoon for a very short period. I'm looking at a long period average. And the long period average which I have determined is right now at 87 centimeter. 87 centimeter. So if I get my 87 centimeter of rainfall in this particular monsoon, I would say I am having a normal monsoon. So I treat this 87 centimeter long period average as my 100% of normal monsoon. 100% of normal monsoon, and I keep a target group that is 96% to 104%. So if I variation of 4% less or more, still I consider it as my normal monsoon. Still I consider it as my normal monsoon. And why I've said, why IMD stating that I am going to have our normal monsoon, because the deviation is 6%, which means I'm going to have 106% of rainfall, not just 104%, which I usually consider as my normal rainfall. Okay. So moving on to the next one. So like I told you earlier also that we are going to discuss something extra today, that is the corrupt practices. So Supreme Court has again come up with a statement that there is nothing corrupt in making promises in manifestos, says Supreme Court. So let's understand, what do you understand by corrupt practices? So there is a particular act known as Representation of People Act 1951. So it's an act of 1951, Representation of People Act, and it basically deals with elections in India. It deals with elections in India, and there is this particular section 123 of the act, which actually defines what are corrupt practices. What are corrupt practices? And it is important to understand corrupt practices, because if a person is held guilty, if a person is found guilty of attempting or doing any corrupt practices, then he can be disqualified. He can be disqualified from fighting election, or if he's already elected personnel, then he can be disqualified from that office also. So that is why it is important to understand what do you understand by corrupt practices. So under section 123 of the Representation of People of Act, if someone is involved in the act of bribery, if someone is trying to undue influence the voters, if someone is providing false information, or if someone is trying to promote feeling of enmity or hatred between between different class of citizens, like on the basis of your caste, religion, race, etc. All of this amounts to corrupt practices. So if you are trying to bribe the voters, it is a corrupt practice. Undue influence, what do you understand by undue influence? That you are somehow stating that if you don't vote for my party, then I might harm your family. That is an example of undue influence. Or let's say you are saying, if you don't vote for me, then such and such, I'll do such kind of black magic over you. Even that would be part of undue influence. So all of these are not allowed under this. Whether if you start using such kind of, whether you do a promise of financial promise, whether that amounts to undue influence or not, that was the caution in this particular case. Next, false information. So if you provide any false information by which the voter can get influenced, for example, you say you have falsely provided, an example of false information would be that you have provided that you have no criminal case against you. You have no criminal case against you. So it is a false information, and because you have a clean record, then it might influence the voters to vote in your favor. So if you provide such kind of information, then it is considered false information. And finally, if you promote feelings of enmity or hatred between different class of people, then also it is considered as a corrupt practice. Now, Supreme Court view on corrupt practices, how the Supreme Court has provided under different case laws, whether it would amount to corrupt practice or not. For example, let's look at the first one. So it is related to Abhiram case, Abhiram karke case name hai. And under this case, in this case, the Supreme Court said, if a person is asking for vote in name of religion, race, caste, community or language, if someone is asking for vote in the name of these identity standards, then it is a corrupt practice. It is a corrupt practice. However, pay attention now. If a party is promising freebies, it is not a corrupt practices. So someone is saying that you are going to get free laptop, you are going to get a free mobile phone in case you may vote for us, then it is not considered a corrupt practice. So that is not a corrupt practice, very important. Similarly, this is also important. If you are promising financial benefit, it is also not a corrupt practice. So for example, Congress is claiming that if they come to power, then they are going to give 1 lakh, if they are going to provide a certain amount, 1 lakh to every woman per year. So that is one kind of promise which they have made. So if such kind of promises are made, this would also not amount to a corrupt practices. Such kind of promises can be made in the manifestos. And fourth is false information. False information about a candidate's qualification is not a corrupt practice. This is very important. If a candidate has provided false information regarding their education qualification, it is not a corrupt practice. So what is a corrupt practice in terms of false information? It should be such information which can influence the voters. However, as per Supreme Court, no person goes and vote for a particular candidate with when looking at their education qualification. Because of this does not matter whether it has been stated as correctly or not. You might agree or might not agree with it, but you should remember, if a legal reasoning question comes up with regard to this corrupt practice only, you should understand that if you have provided false information regarding your education qualification, it is not a corrupt practice. Okay. However, criminal case having a clean criminal record is considered one of the values, one of the characteristics by which the voters mood can change with you, in favor of you or against you. So this would be considered as part of false information if any information is provided wrong. Moving on, so Chabhar's opportunity and challenges. So Chabhar is a port in Iran, and one of the terminal, not the whole of Chabhar port, is being developed by India. You should know this. There is a misconception regarding that the whole of Chabhar port is being developed by India, but only one terminal right now is being developed by India. So some facts are there. You should read this article if you are reading the Hindu. It's a really good article. So Chabhar port, it's a India-Iran project. So it came into pipeline. So the discussion around it actually started in the year 2003, and from 2010 there were active talks, and finally some advance was done only in the year 2017-18, and finally now in the year 2024 we have come up with a 10-year plan for this. So the particular terminal which India is developing is actually the Shahid Behishti terminal. So this is the terminal which is being developed by India. This is the other terminal which is not developed by India, which is not being developed by India. So why is Chabhar important? So one reason why Chabhar is important, because of the Gwadar port in Pakistan. So Gwadar is a port being developed by China, and it is part of your CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So CPEC or Gwadar port is the port in Pakistan which is part of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and it is being developed by China only. So Chabhar is kind of a counter. It is a kind of a counter to the Gwadar port. So by having a port very near to Gwadar port, we can observe, we can always keep an eye what is happening on the Gwadar port and what is happening between our arch enemy like China and Pakistan. Also, your Chabhar port is very near to Kandla port. So it is only 550 nautical miles. So the distance of Chabhar port to Kandla port is only 550 nautical miles. Moreover, if India and Russia and Iran goes forward with their international north-south transit and transport corridor, so INSTC stands for your International North-South Transit and Transport Corridor. And if India, Iran and your Russia are able to complete it, then this Chabhar port is going to become an important transit point for goods moving from India, from Iran towards your European countries, finally to Russia. So it would become an important transit point for the goods moving on between your India and your European nation. So that's why the Chabhar port is important for us. Moving on to the next news. So we discussed Taliban yesterday also. Taliban basically means it's a Pashto term, and it basically Taliban actually means students. So these were students who had studied violence or terrorism. So some facts regarding why I'm discussing it again today is because Russia has stated that it's going to remove Taliban from the terror list, says the foreign minister. Sergei Lavrov is the foreign minister in photograph. So is the Taliban government recognized by any government right now? So the answer is no. None of the governments of the world has recognized the government of Taliban. However, there are certain countries who have listed it as terrorist organization. So Taliban is still a terrorist organization in these countries. So it is a terrorist country in Canada, Japan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and UAE, and maybe Russia also removes from it. Recently Kazakhstan had earlier recognized it as a terrorist organization, and now it has removed it. So let's see whether let's pay attention to this news also, that whether Russia removes it from the terrorist list or not. You can see one important fact which you can see here is that India does not recognize it as a terrorist organization. US also does not recognize it as terrorist organization. Okay, so this is an important fact. Next is, so EU-Israel ties strained as members to recognize Palestine state. So I hope you know that the war, Israel-Hamas war, is going on, and Hamas is primarily located in the state of Palestine. So Gaza Strip and West Bank together they form the Palestine state. So state of Palestine is recognized by many countries. However, it is not recognized by many prominent nations like your Israel, like your United States, like your United Kingdom. So many of the Western countries which are friendly to Israel, very much friendly to Israel, although India is also friendly to Israel, but it has always supported a two-state solution for Israel-Palestine. So what is a two-state solution? Two-state solution simply means that there should not be just one state, there should be two states. One should be Israel and one should be Palestine. So that is a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, and India is in support of it. India is in support of it. So I've already told you what is state of Palestine. It is the West Bank area plus your Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip. So it should be recognized as a separate state. Now, as of now, it is recognized by 142 states out of the 193 member states of United Nations. So out of the 193 member states, it is recognized by 142 states, including India, obviously India. So India has been recognizing it since 1988. 1988. What kind of status does it has in the United Nations General Assembly? So there are different categories of status of a country in the United Nations General Assembly. For example, the best status is the member status. The next best is your observer status, and next is your non-observer status, and finally a non-member, which means you have no membership out of it. And since 2012 it has a non-member observer status, so it is right now as a observer member of the United Nations General Assembly. Observer status simply means that you can come and watch. You can come and watch, you can observe the proceedings of General Assembly, but you do not have right to vote or participation. So you cannot give any kind of speech. You cannot be part of that summit in any way. You can just be there to observe it. Now, why it has come up in news? Because three European Union companies who had earlier not recognized the Palestinian states, those countries are Spain, Ireland, both of them who are part of your European Union, and Norway, which is not a EU nation. These three countries have decided to recognize the state of Palestine. State of Palestine. So these three countries have now decided that they are going to recognize the state of Palestine. So once it would be recognized, these three countries are also going to have diplomatic relationship with the state of Palestine, which means they would have an embassy. If they want, they would have an embassy in the state of Palestine, and an ambassador of Palestine would be given an embassy in these states also. So that is the beginning of diplomatic relations between these countries when you start recognizing a country as a state. Moving on to the last news. So one news from Indian Express I have taken, all of the other news have been overlapping in your Hindu newspaper and your Indian Express. So just let's look at this this particular explanation with regard to the usage of AI or artificial intelligence in legal cases. So recently it has been observed that certain high courts have been using ChatGPT and other AI tools in their judgments. For example, so it is a very general overview. There is nothing regarding a particular law which has been given. It is just giving you an idea how AI is being used in certain legal cases, and I provided a summary of it, what this particular article is talking about. So I provided summary because most of you read the Hindu newspaper, so you might not have access to this. So what is the AI usage guideline? So is there a usage guideline with regard to the usage of AI in the courts? So answer is no guidelines in India. So in India, it is up to the court whether they want to use it or not.6however, United Kingdom has come up with guidelines, and therein it is stated that it should only be used for research purposes. It can be used for research purposes. For example, for summarizing a long document. Then for research purposes it can be used, otherwise it should not be used. Next, what is this article talking about? So this article is stating that judges have used AI to do some extra research. For example, it has given the example of Manipur High Court, where the Manipur High Court was not able to find a particular law. So he went to the ChatGPT website, and there he asked the ChatGPT to provide certain facts regarding that particular case. Like there is a village defense force. This is a case of Manipur only, and certain facts were missing, certain regulations and rules were not present there. So it asked ChatGPT to formulate that policy and what could be the possible policy in that case, and on the basis of which this particular judge actually provided a judgment. So next is apart from this, there was another case. There was a case of your Punjab and Haryana High Court, wherein the judge actually asked ChatGPT that what kind of punishment, what kind of judgment it should be giving in that case. So there was a case of cruelty in this particular case, and it was asked by ChatGPT to frame a judgment regarding it. However, later the judge clarified that it was not the operative part of the judgment, and it was only to add on to what he had already had given in the judgment. So it was only an addition. However, certain high courts like the Delhi High Court has rejected the use of AI for legal cases. For example, it has stated that it is very hard to rely on AI because it has factual errors. It can give you factual responses or factual errors. So that is a possibility. Apart from it, it can also create imaginative data. So it can create its own data to back up its claim, as well as it can also create fictional cases. It can also give you fictional cases. For example, like you might be, it is a habit, it is a trend in your law colleges. When you go there in your first year, second year, you create random names like Ram of India, Lakshman versus Ram versus Lakshman, etc. These kind of case laws, and you give a citation also. All India report of 2005, Supreme Court 2060. So usually this is how you give a citation, and in my college life I've also seen that many students used to give these fictitious names to their case laws to support their answers. So because ChatGPT can also be like you only by providing fictional cases, so Delhi High Court has been of the view that ChatGPT should not be used for this particular purposes for providing judgments, because it can be factually incorrect. It can provide you with imaginative data or wrong data, as well as it can provide you fictional cases. So that's why the Delhi High Court has been of the view that we should not be using AI. Now it is only an opinion. This is an opinion piece. So it is up to you whether you think that we should be using AI or not. So I hope I've been able to make you understand these topics. So that's it from my side for today. So thank you and have a very nice day, and I hope to see you in your next class.